Hello and welcome to Gunnar Weiskamp's web development on Angular today. We're doing lesson 3 today. Today we are going to talk about Angular expressions, controllers, declaring functions, and the ng model directive. So, without further ado, let's bring up Visual Studio here. Now, this tutorial will be building on from the last tutorial. So I've got a lot of the code interface there, which is the same. So on the right here, we can see that this is just a simple application. We've got our scripts folder here. We've got one HTML page, so you can add it to your solution if you want. In here, we've inserted or put in Angular, obviously, and my app Angular file is also in there, which is here in this area here. So that's the basic components of this application. Very easy for you guys to recreate if you want. So yeah, here we can see my Angular script, pretty straightforward stuff. And here we can see the HTML page. So let's, we briefly talked about controllers before. Let me just explain a little bit more in detail for those new. When defining a controller in an app, it's pretty straightforward to do. You call the Angular controller here, you give your controller a name, and then you pass in any dependencies that it might need. Then you can create multiple controllers also, as is evident here. And then when using them in your HTML, you can put them on many different tags. Div doesn't just have to be a div, can be many different tags. So you define your controller with this tag here, and we can see this controller here will be associated with all the code that is running here. The next div down is for my controller 2, and this controller here will be associated with all the code that gets executed in this controller. So this way you can sort of break up your HTML in different logical areas. Just say this was called employee birthday information, you could have in here employee address information. So it's a simple example. So yeah, we're first going to touch on expressions. Let me grab some code here that I've made before. So yeah, I just want to demonstrate how the magic of controllers work via the use of expressions. And you guys come here with me. Let's go there. Let me get rid of this guy here. And this guy here. Right, so there we have. Let's save it all. So here is what we have is called expressions in Angular. How you define expressions is quite simple. You just type your curly brackets here, double curly brackets, and then you put in your expression, the item that you want to render to your screen. So in both the controllers we have here a number of expressions. I'm doing this process because I want to show a positive and negative test when using controllers. So in this controller here we've got number 1. So when this page comes up in a minute, we will see the number 1 literally from here render. We won't see number 2 render here because this scope object, as we like to call them, is only in this controller. Vice versa with the my controller 2, you will not see number 1 appear here, but you'll see number 2 appear here. So we've saved it all. Let's bring up the screen, press refresh. Voila, it worked. So yeah, as you can see here, let's minimize that a little bit. Should hopefully for you guys be somewhat easy to understand. So here, this expression is just showing the number 1, which is we can see here, and this is just showing number 2. You might say, shouldn't an error happen? With expressions, they're very forgiving. They'll just fail. You won't even see it on the screen. So that can be a good and a bad thing. It all depends if you really need to see that information. So that's a basic introductory to expressions. We will go on now to what we got, a little bit more super duper stuff. Somewhat a little bit more complicated, but it gets you moving into more interesting areas of Angular. So if we hold on, so we get the code. And we'll get the HTML as well. Let's get rid of the controller here, because we won't be needing controller 2 anymore. So let's clean all this up. So before I compile the code, I guess I'll try to explain a certain number of issues here. So here we've got a simple input box. It's quite straightforward. This input box will only be able to accept a number. You can only put in there a type number. That's what that type is for. Now, this is our wonderful ng model, Mr. Magic. Let's just leave it there. Here we have an ng change. This is an Angular function, which will obviously call every time you type something into this text box, every time it changes, just like the JavaScript onChange event. So those are the 3 objects. Now you might be wondering how all this works, which is a good thing. Let's just move over here to our Angular file, so we're fully aware what's going on over here. We're declaring a scope variable number 1, which will be tied over here to our expression. Don't get it mixed up with this guy. That could easily happen. That's tied over here with our expression. Now we're declaring a function here called multiply, and that's going to be used on our ng change. It gets passed. Now here's where some of the magic happens. The ng model has a parameter called multiplier. This object, once you type something in, the typed in data will go into this ng model object. That'll be passed on to this guy here, which is then passed on to that guy here, which will be used in our function, which all we're doing here is multiplying by 2. So if you were to type in 2 into the text box, it would be 2 times 2 equals 4, and that ends up here in our expression. So if we're lucky, let's just refresh that. So currently we've just got 1 showing up there because, yeah, you can see that the expression is rendering and it's currently equal to 1, so that's correct. Now, like I said, if I put 2 in there, ta-da, my maths is right, it equals 4. 2 times 2 equals 4. 4 times 2 equals 8. So obviously this is a simple function, but that gives you some idea of the ng model, because it can be confusing at first because you're wondering where's all this guy going and what's he doing. But simply put, this ng model, yeah, it accepts anything that you're typing in to the text box. This gets passed onto the function and onto the Angular script. So that's how the ng model comes into play. It can be used with, the ng model can be used with many different HTML tags, not just the input tag. You can use it with select lists. So when you use a HTML select list and you're selecting something, the ng model will get that data. I will be using the ng select, not the ng select, the select list with ng model later on. I'm going to do a quick demo. I should have touched a little bit more on expressions, and I don't think I did enough on that. So I just want to put in here best to do this. Input type text ng model last name that should do it. Let's copy that guy over. First name add both names together. So now last name plus, we'll put a space in there, plus first name. So you can concatenate strings together with expressions as well. They're much more flexible than I thought. Sort of first demonstrated in that first bit, and I wasn't too happy that I hadn't gone a little bit more in depth about it. What should happen here is this ng model. I don't think we needed to declare a scope object. Let's just give that a whirl. I think this should work, but I could be wrong. Ooh, so let's try. Oops. There we go. So that was a little bit more on the expressions. I just wanted to demonstrate that you can do a lot more things. You can add two numbers together if you wanted to, even so that takes a little bit more work because numbers are not strings. There's a bit more concept learning behind that. But I just wanted to demonstrate within expressions there is a vast amount of different functionality that you can do, this just being one. Alright, I hope everybody got something from that. I enjoyed bringing it over. But, oops. Yeah, but if you'd like to visit my website there or look up some of my other tutorials, feel more than welcome to do that. Alright, good night and good luck.